What's up guys, it's Cam from Distorted Views. Today I'm going to show you how you can get your MIDI drums to go from this to this. Might be a little bit over the top, but hey, with the genre of music I'm making, I like the drums to sound slamming, super punchy, and just in your face, because we tune super low here if you've heard our music. If you haven't, go check it out. And yeah, so I'm going to show you guys what I do to achieve that. So first things first, what I would normally do is actually bounce out all the individual tracks into audio files if I was going into a mix. Two things. One, it's nice and easy to group everything together when you can see the kick waveform, the snare waveform, the overhead waveforms, and bake them all into audio, and then you can group them together. And then I like to scroll down and have all my vocals grouped together, and then scroll down and have all my guitars. You know, when I'm looking at the project, it's kind of nice and neat for my workflow, as well as for most computers it'll save on CPU as well, not having to actually run the MIDI live. So I'll just quickly show you how to achieve that. So instantly what I go to is I'll go click the song format. I'm going to highlight the entire section of what the song would be. You're going to see that I've flipped the polarity of the kick drum, or the kick one shot, the layered, as well as the snare one shot, to put them in phase with each other. On my last tutorial I showed how to do that, but essentially you just pan left and right two mono signals, use a correlation plugin, or use your ears, but I like to use the plugin as well, just to make sure that I'm not doubting myself when I make a decision in a mix. So the way you'd normally do this is you wouldn't have any effects on any of these chains here. Because I'm making a YouTube video, I've already gone ahead and messed around with everything, but normally this would be the first process you would do after routing your MIDI drums to selected inserts. So pretty much from there, on FL Studio it's Control and Shift, and you're just gonna go all the way across to every individual channel that you have. Then you're going to go up here, disc recording, render selected tracks to WAV files, song selection, because I've selected how much of the song I want. We're going to go for the highest quality, 32-bit stereo, and go. And there you have it. That's gone and baked all of that audio into WAV files, or printed all that audio. So now if I was to come over to just the reverb, for this YouTube video, I'm just going to mix out of the MIDI drums. However, I just wanted to show you if I was doing a full-on mix with other guitars and synths and vocals and the whole thing, that would be pretty much how I would do it. Alright, so getting back to this. So first things first, I'm going to go over to the reverb. Now, you'll notice that on all of this production, the first tip I can give you guys is the way that I mix drums mostly is all of the individual tracks, I'm just finding artifacts that I don't like, and that's ringing, peaking resonances, that's muddiness, you know, that might be honkiness, just taking away elements that I don't like within the raw file. And then what I mainly do for mixing is actually everything's going to be on that drum bus and on a parallel drum bus. So essentially this is my clean drums. This is still going to sound super punchy and full, but for my type of music, I like to just have a second blended in layer of just absolutely squashed and smashed and distorted parallel drums that are clipped and saturated and just pretty much no dynamics left in it. It's just a squash thing, to give it that sustain and that body and that fullness. And I just kind of blend that in with the original drum bus over here. This is more of a controlled drum bus, and then you got the smash one, and I feel like that helps you get kind of the best of both worlds without sacrificing on clarity. So the majority of the mixing, I'll show you the full drum bus shortly, but the majority of the mixing is going to be just attenuating things and taking away things I don't like. So with the reverb, what I've done is a basic EQ, and I've just taken out muddiness, and there was a ringing in here, and I'm rolling off a lot of the highs. So might be different with different drums. Most MIDI drums are already processed out the box. They're already pretty much there. So I try not to add too much to MIDI. If you're using Modern and Massive, there's a lot more processing available. They sound a lot more raw and a lot more realistic. It's actually quite crazy how far the technology has come and the sampling has come. But with Ultimate Heavy Drums, this is how I do it. And a transient master as well. So what I've done is I've actually just taken off a lot of that sustain. I use this transient master plugin a lot. I just think it sounds great and it does the job. It is very strong though. So let's have a listen to that. you'll hear there that it was very bright, very hissy beforehand, and a bit muddy too. You can hear a lot of that mud's been removed. It sounds a little bit thin, but that's done intentionally. I don't want this sounding super full in the mix. It's just that reverb on the snare in the background and a little bit on the toms as well to kind of give it that room to go hand in hand with that room mic. That's pretty much how I like to use it. Cool. So if you hear as well, you know. Right, onto the kick. So what I like to do with my kicks, if I'm layering kicks, is I like to have a low-end rumble sub kind of kick mixed with a more clicky high-end tighter kick drum. So what I like to do is have the sustain in one kick and then have the attack in another. So pretty much with the kick drum we've done here, that's what it sounds like raw. So you hear the two differences in the kick there, and then the way that I've EQ'd them, and I've used a transient designer again, is you'll see that with the first kick, I find that it kind of makes the kick sound deeper when you get rid of these kind of honky, muddy frequencies within the kick, and it's just pure sub and pure treble. And there's a little bit of clickiness there that I wanted to take out of this sample too. And that's literally it. A lot of these samples are already compressed, they're already sounding really good, and I'm going to be doing a lot of drum bus compression anyway, so I don't want to do too much to it, otherwise it just sounds super over processed really quickly. Coming to the one shot, there was a bit of like a ringing coming from here. And then just some honkiness. And then I'm using a transient master and getting rid of some of that sustain so that this kick sample doesn't last as long. And then I'm increasing some of that attack so that top end clickiness gets through and then it gets kind of stopped. And then in combination, and they're both being sent to the kick bus. And pretty much from here, I use a clipper on pretty much all my buses and on all my routing at the end of the chain, so that when it gets to the drum bus, all the top of those transients are all coming in nice and even. So I don't use the clipper in the same way that where they're trying to create distortion or they're trying to clip a signal for saturation or something like that. So the way I like to use the clipper in this manner is to just control the very, very top of those transients that peak out or that stick out. So it won't actually be clipping all the time. It might only clip 20 to 30% of the time. It's just when those random little peaks that pop through, that clip is just going to roll them off and stop them. But I don't want to cause any audible distortion. I don't want to actually clip these the way that I normally would be using a clipper. So you see there, almost not all the kicks are getting clipped. The little bit of gray that you see above the line, that's what the clip is actually clipping. But most of the kicks are falling just under that. It's just those few kicks that come in a little bit over that threshold, they're going to get clipped. And I do that across pretty much everything. So then when I do my drum bus, the compressors and everything on the drum bus cannot overreact to extra peaks that are coming in. My room mic, I used to do a lot more on the room mics. I started incorporating less is more into my mixing, and I found like my mixes have gotten better when I actually do less and I stop over processing. Not everything is a yes and no 100% guarantee. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So for this room mic, I literally just took out some muddiness and I controlled the highs and boosted a little bit of where the snare is, bring a bit of the body back. So you hear that honkiness and that muddiness is just taken out of that room mic, and then those resonances on the top end, you know, it is super harsh. I don't know if it's just my ears, but I like those overheads sounding like a white wall of sound, but not going like shh in, you know, hissing in your ear. And the way I set that up is I just go here, I click on dynamic. You could probably go as high as -6 if you really wanted to bring them down. You click this little waveform here for dynamic range, and then I've come over and I've made the attack a bit faster and the release a little bit longer. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I could probably clip this as well, to be honest. I didn't add that on, but I would probably clip this too. So just barely taking hardly anything off there at all. All right, going on to the snare. So with the snare, you will see that there's this super annoying ringing within one of the snare samples. Normally, if I only had one snare, I wouldn't be doing this, but because I'm layering, I can get away with it, but I'm literally taking out all of those frequencies. I could probably change that to a band stop as well, and then go over to the layered snare, a bit deeper. Not doing much at all, pretty much just getting rid of that. Just getting rid of that kind of honkiness that I didn't like within there. Adding a distressor onto the snare bus. Four to 5 dB of compression, 6:1 ratio. Pretty much just use the big snare, then mess with the settings a little bit. Decent attack on it. I do want that initial transient of the snare to come through. And then I'm just taking a tiny bit off the sustain, not much, just because the way that I'm mixing, I want a lot of that sustain to come from the parallel drum bus, and then I want the actual drum bus to be more tight and quick. And then I'm trying to combine both of those together and blend them so I can get the best of both worlds, essentially. Onto the China. So you'll hear a bit of ringing and stuff that I've taken out of this. And then clipping. Barely doing anything, but that's the point. So here on the hi-hat. Now, I am taking a lot of brightness out of everything across the board, but I'm introducing it back when I do my drum bus mixing. So there's going to be saturation, harmonics, there's going to be plugins that are going to increase the brightness. So I'm kind of just getting rid of and taming all of those bad frequencies I don't like, so I can make everything sound bright on the drum bus, essentially. Otherwise, if you don't attenuate all of these noises, when you're making everything louder and more full, I find that you're also making all the bad noises louder and all of those ugly noises louder, which we don't want. So I like to get rid of all of them and then do most of the mixing on the drum bus. Splash would just be the same thing. Overheads are the same thing. If you listen to the overheads. So big difference there in the overheads, not as bright in your face, getting rid of all the honkiness, a little bit of that mud, and a massive whistle. When you turn that on and off, makes a big difference. Awesome. So on to the toms. Now again, toms I don't do much. I might do a bit of multi-band compression after this if I need to. Normally when I print these to audio, I will actually roll them off manually within the waveform, like in the playlist here. For here, literally just taking out all of that mud. So if we go to the tom section, so here's what the toms sound like raw. So same concept, I just take out all of that like middle. And then there's a couple extra rings. Same thing, when you take away all those mids and that honkiness, like a lot of the guitars are going to sit here, and in the harshness of all those overheads and stuff, that's where a lot of the vocal and the air and the reverbs and stuff are going to sit as well. So I'm kind of blending in, I'm thinking of kind of like pocket EQing as well while I'm doing this. Now in a full mix you would be referencing and stuff, but yeah, I'm essentially having the drums be sub, low, mids and treble, and then vocal, you have all the upper mids of the screams especially, and then mids being guitars are just all mid-range, and then bass obviously sub. Awesome. So now to the meat and potatoes of the tutorial. The very first thing I do on here is I put Fruity Send on. Okay. So with Fruity Send, the reason why we put it first is because it's going to be first in the chain. So I want the parallel drums that are going to be absolutely smashed. I want that signal to come in raw, the same way that this drum bus is listening to that audio. I don't want to have the send on the bottom, because then it's going to go through this entire chain, then go through this entire chain, which you don't want. So I literally load up Fruity Send, right click sidechain here, then go to Fruity Send, right click send to, para drum is what I've called it, which is the parallel drum. First thing I do is Supercharger. I love this plugin, I've been using it for years. Essentially, I go on the drum bus preset and I just go 50-50. And then I try to taper off the output a little bit. I've pulled about 3 dB back. I'm trying to gain stage my way through as well, so it doesn't just get louder, 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 louder. If the drums are going to be louder, or at least perceived louder throughout the whole chain, but I like to, yeah, just pull back on the output there as well. Then I'm going into the transient master. Again, because this is where I'm getting a lot of my sustain and that fullness from, I'm going to pull back a tad bit on the sustain here and increase the attack. So you get that nice transient coming in, but how long it lasts, pull that back just a little bit. Again, 5% and 10%, barely, just that tiniest little bit. Distressor, I like this plugin, and just adding a bit of drum bus. Not one plugin does a lot of work. It's like a little bit, and then a little bit, and then a little bit, and a little bit, and but every little bit adds up to the end piece. Next, I like to put some tape emulation on to give it some extra saturation and tape emulation. Now, this will raise the noise floor. You'll notice there'll be like a bit of a hissing. In this type of music, it doesn't really matter. You're definitely not going to notice it because it's so full, punchy, everything's super loud, low-tuned guitars, screaming vocals, like it's fine. However, you can put a noise gate on if you don't like it. So I'm going to go to the Pro Q4 after this. Again. So again, just attenuating a couple noises within the bus that all of this processing is introducing, and just attenuating stuff I'm not feeling. Cool, go to the virtual mix rack now. I like this revival plugin to add a little bit of brightness back in, as well as the thickness, and I'm just clipping as well with the trimmer. What I do with this as well is I go onto the gain and I make sure whatever gain I'm putting up, so in this case I've pushed it 12 dB, I'm going to go on the output gain and I'm going to make it negative 12 dB here as well, so then I can gain stage that a bit better. Yeah, super cool. Just adds that, you know, I'm attenuating so much of the high end, it's nice to bring some of that back in the bus as well. Then I've got K clip here. You could use any clipper. You can see I'm using different clippers throughout the thing. On the drums tube slammer preset, 12 dB in, but then I'm going negative dB out to gain stage, 25% on soften, tube mode, mix at 100%, and Again, just catching those little bit of transients at the very top. I'll just swap those around. And then here we go. So every now and then the snare comes in and gets, you know, about 3.5 dB of clipping there. But most of it's quite small. Now, saturator. This one, don't really need, but I've been experimenting with this plugin lately, and I really like the way it sounds. Yeah, I like that. 20% wet to dry mix though. Blend that in a little bit, right? Just again, it's saturation. Sounds so good. So this is what it sounds like without the parallel drum. So I'm gonna mute this parallel drum bus. So it's probably too loud, but yeah, like you blend that in, and by itself, it sounds like this. Just absolutely smashed. Like, it's not supposed to be dynamic. It's not supposed to be clean. Definitely not supposed to be clean. But yeah, that is your, you know. So I've got a distressor on it. I've got it on 20-1, just nuking the crap out of it. Super long attack time, super quick release time. I've even brought the headroom all the way down to 28, like super low. Push drum bus tape emulation. I've done the opposite with a lot of the transient designing. I'm pushing a lot of that sustain, and I'm actually getting rid of a lot of the attack because I don't want this to sit on top of the drums. It's meant to feel back. It's meant to be like a room mic, essentially. I want it to sit underneath everything and behind it. Limiting it, parallel particles, super cool plugin, adding thickness, air bite, and a bit more sub low end. And again, I'm just clipping it. And then to stop some phasing issues on the sides, I've gone onto I put an EQ at the end here. I've gone onto here, clicked on side, and then done a low cut from about 220 hertz low end out of that. So then these two aren't having phase issues. And that is pretty much it. Short version. I'm getting rid of ringing, getting rid of resonances that I don't like, getting rid of muddiness, scooping out some mids of the kick drum and the toms to make room for the guitars, and also to get rid of any honkiness. Also makes the kick drum and that sound a bit deeper, in my opinion. Layering sounds, make sure they're in phase, and then treating all of those sounds together as a unit on a drum bus and bringing everything up super loud and punchy and in your face with blending. Having a clean drum bus and then a more disgusting drum bus, and combining those two sounds together. And that's pretty much it, guys. And then, you know, from there I'm side chaining basses and making sounds move with each other and move around each other and stuff like that. But that could be another tutorial for a full song. But yeah, let me know what you think. And yeah, if you want me to do a specific tutorial on anything else, just drop it in the comments, man, and I'll let you know what my process is. But anyway, hope you enjoy it, and see you guys in the next one. See you later.